Today on CityCast DC, 10 dogs tragically died on Monday after flash floods in Northeast. But this is a story that we've heard before. What is the city doing about it? Plus, the city's been accused of selectively arresting protesters, and we've got some gripes about City Paper's Best of DC list. The team's Priyanka Tilve and Kayla Cody Stimmerman are here to chat with me about it. Today's Friday, August 18th. I'm Bridget Todd, and here's what DC is talking about. First, I know a big story that is on all of our minds is what's going on with these dogs. Priyanka, what can you tell us about it?
Oh, so sad. Okay, so there was that crazy storm on Monday, right? Like high winds.
Yeah.
Lots of rain. In the 600 block of Rhode Island Northeast, it's like a famously dangerous zone of the city for flash floods. And there's a pet daycare there called District Dogs. And the flash flooding got up to 6 feet inside that building at some points on Monday. And there were about 40 to 50 dogs in there when it happened. The staff who were in there were risking their lives to save whichever dogs they could. But ultimately, the firefighters showed up and they had to break through drywall to let water out of the building. And they rescued 7 employees and 20 dogs. But 10 dogs died. I don't know if you had a chance to watch this, but there was this absolutely heartbreaking interview with the District Dog's owner. Our friend of the pod, Mark Seagraves, is the one who interviewed him. And he said that they're permanently closing down this location.
It's completely heartbreaking to make these phone calls and talk to these owners. This is not why we're in business. It's not anything that we should have to expect to do. I was told last year all the DC officials, it was safe, everything was working, it can be finished. We were assured that it was a safe place to open for business.
It's District Dogs Northeast, and they are permanently closed. It's already updated on Google, and they say they're looking for a better and safer facility to reopen in. But the thing that's especially tragic about this situation is that this particular District Dogs flooded last year too during really bad rainstorms. And it's because, again, like this 600 block section of Rhode Island Northeast, just the way it is situated in the city, it's kind of like low level and it's prone to flooding. And so last year when this happened, the owner apparently pled with the city to do something about it because it's a flood prone area. Obviously, whatever the city was planning to do did not happen quickly enough. And it wasn't just the dogs. No humans died, but there were 5 cars and 1 truck that also got stuck underwater in that exact same zone, like under the Rhode Island Ave railway bridge. And it's just a tragic story.
It is a real tragedy. And first of all, major shout outs to these employees who tried to do what they could to save these dogs. I can't imagine how tough that was. And I think what really gets to me about this story is that I think that we're going to see more and more extreme storms with these kinds of consequences, like real consequences. And so I don't think this is a story that we, as horrible as it is, I think we have to sort of prepare ourselves that this might be something that becomes standard.
Yeah, completely agree. When I mentioned that the city is trying to do something about it, what it is they're trying to do is build this tunnel. They say that the tunnel is supposed to open up like in September, within the next 2 months at the latest. And it's supposed to help with flooding in the area. It's supposed to add a lot of additional capacity for like sewage and rainwater to get stored essentially in the tunnel, which would mean that it gets off the streets and prevents the likelihood of flooding and flash floods especially. But I mean, they've been working on this tunnel for a really, really long time. And other ones that they're supposed to open are supposed to open in like 2030. So it's pretty far away. And I feel like we need some short-term solutions in the meantime, or like faster response times from emergency services, because I think you're right, Bridget. I think that this kind of extreme weather is going to get worse. I mean, this year already, the storms we've had feel way more dramatic than storms in previous years.
And also, I'm kind of wondering if there's anything that like the District Dogs could have done on their side as well. Because, I mean, I remember seeing those pictures last year of like the water halfway up their door. And like, if this is a consistent thing, is there anything that you can do on their end? You know, I'm not sure, but it does seem like a lot of grieving dog parents are sort of taking their anger out on this District Dog specifically.
That is a good point. I mean, like, I hate to blame a pet daycare center. And obviously agree that the city should be doing stuff too. But there were a lot of warnings on Monday about the fact that there were going to be really bad storms. There was a tornado watch even. My gym closed early because of this. A lot of the libraries all closed early on Monday. So maybe they should have called owners and sent the pets home. There were reports of owners being like, I had no idea there was a problem until I showed up to pick up my dog and then saw the firefighters there.
Wow.
That's tragic. Yeah.
I have a question. You said that this has happened before in this specific area. Are there other dangerous flood zones in DC that we should know about?
Yeah, there are. So Ivy City near Bethesda Baptist Church is another area that's really flood prone. And actually, the church was once again flooded this year. And again, it's not the first time. The pastor said that the carpet was ruined and it had only been installed 2 years prior after a similar flood. And these kinds of repairs cost the church tens of thousands of dollars. There are also really dangerous flood-prone zones in Arlington and Alexandria. Within DC itself, it's mostly those areas of Northeast, at least from what I read. But it's also notable that it was kind of hard to find out. I spent a significant amount of time this week trying to research the danger zones in DC, and you kind of have to cobble things together, cobble information together from reading different news articles. The DC water map is not very easy to use or clear.
Well, that goes back to your question about could we be doing more? Should the city be doing more to warn people and give people information? It's one thing to do a flood warning the morning of a storm or a storm warning the morning of a storm, but making sure people understand, hey, if you're in these zones, if you live in these zones, these are flood-prone zones in the city, could be good. More information never hurt anybody.
That's so true. And also maybe changing the regulations for how many, exits a place needs to have or types of exits a place needs to have in order to protect people and pets.
Also, doesn't it seem like there's lower lift things that you can do to protect from flooding? Besides digging a literal tunnel through the earth, can't you put in water pathways or grass on cement so that the water can seep through, or smaller, lower lift things that would help the situation in the next, 6 months to a year rather than waiting until 2030 or more? I don't know.
Seems like there should be, yeah.
So a DC panel of judges has agreed to let 2 anti-abortion activists sue the city. These 2 anti-abortion activists say that they were unfairly arrested during the 2020 racial justice uprisings where everybody was protesting for Black Lives Matter in the streets that summer. They say that they chalked the phrase Black Preborn Lives Matter outside of a NOMA Planned Parenthood, while racial justice protesters who wrote phrases like Black Lives Matter on public spaces did not face the same consequences that they did. They're saying this is unfair. They want to sue the city. A panel of DC judges is saying that is okay. They can sue the city. The court has been ordered to reconsider the previously dismissed claims of selective prosecution. So it is illegal for people to write or mark any public or private property without a permit. However, it sounds like the protesters are saying, while all of these racial justice protesters were doing the same thing, they were selectively arrested and selectively faced consequences for writing anti-abortion messages outside of Planned Parenthood.
Yeah, exactly. I read that one of the judges, she is the Trump-appointed judge, Naomi Rao, but there was also an Obama-appointed judge and a Biden-appointed judge on this panel, and they agreed on this decision. But she said that the government cannot play favorites in a public forum, permitting some messages and prohibiting others. And so that's why they're allowing this lawsuit from the anti-abortion activists to go forward. I personally feel really conflicted about this whole situation because it doesn't feel like the two messages that were chalked can be equated. I mean, Black Lives Matter, we have a plaza where the city has written Black Lives Matter itself. If other people are also writing Black Lives Matter on the sidewalk, that doesn't feel the same as writing Black Preborn Lives Matter on a Planned Parenthood clinic.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's the intent and the effect of the words, right? Yes, okay, technically, the physical act is the same thing, but writing Black Lives Matter is not harming or dissuading anybody from getting medical care. They shouldn't be equated in my mind.
Though, to be fair, they are also talking about people who are chalking like defund the police, which personally, I feel like I agree more with people chalking defund the police than people chalking Black preborn lives matter. But like the whole point of the law is that we shouldn't be making decisions based on our personal biases, right? So that's where the conflict comes in. So that's where I'm like, I don't really know how to feel about this.
Priyanka, something that you point out that I think is really relevant here, just happening to know a lot about abortion history, particularly in DC, is that the argument that the anti-abortion activists are making is that it's the same thing as writing Black Lives Matter on a sidewalk. Writing Black preborn lives matter outside of an abortion clinic is the same thing. They put this kind of succinctly in the Washington Post. They write, on Tuesday, the DC Circuit panel found that the anti-abortion activists had acted similarly to the Black Lives Matter protesters whose murals remained. Both groups protested around the same time. Both sought to write messages on DC streets while officers watched. And both probably violated the defacement ordinance. I understand where that sentiment is coming from, but here's why I think it's not a fair comparison, because we have had so many legal precedents about how anti-abortion activists can behave, what they can and can't do outside of Planned Parenthoods and other clinics, right? And so there is no such ordinance, there's no such history of racial justice protesters needing a federal ordinance saying that they cannot get closer than 35 feet to a clinic or to an office or to something like that. We have that when it comes to anti-abortion activists. We did, at least until it was struck down. And so that's there for a reason, because anti-abortion activists doing things outside of places where people are going for care has a history. There is no such history when it comes to racial justice protesters. And so I understand why on the face these two issues look really similar and why you could make a similar argument. However, the history, the legacy, and the actual impacts of what these two groups of protesters have done, completely different.
Agreed. Also, from like a technical standpoint, the Washport article does make it sound like the two things were very similar, and like in some ways I guess they were, but having been out in those BLM protests, the atmosphere was totally different. I mean, like, it was chaos. The police weren't just standing by watching people like whatever write with chalk on the sidewalk. The police were standing there in riot gear and occasionally tear gassing. So like, it doesn't seem plausible that they would have paused to arrest people for writing chalk when they were running, like chasing people down wearing riot gear and tear gassing them. And also there were plenty of arrests.
There were a lot, yeah.
Maybe just not for writing things with chalk.
Yeah, that's what the police are saying, that the two protests were completely different. The racial justice protests in 2020 were big. They were non-hierarchical. So it's like you don't know who is just like out looking, who's part of the protesters, who's organizing, whatever. And importantly, the anti-abortion protesters, their demonstration was much smaller. And it says that they preemptively told the police they were going to be gathering. And I think that there's a real lesson there. If you tell the police, like, hey, my group's going to be gathering here, I don't think you can really feign surprise when it's like the police are interested in what you're doing, right? And so, yeah, surprise, surprise, a much smaller group of people who have preemptively told the police their plans and their intention to gather have faced different consequences than a large, non-hierarchical, loosely organized collection of people who might not even all be organizing under the same banner. Like, it just, again, I think that on the surface, there are some comparisons to be made, but when you actually drill down into what's going on, they're actually quite different. Now, again, obviously, I am fervently pro-choice. I am fervently, pro people making medical and health decisions for themselves. So maybe that's just my bias showing. I do hope these people get their day in court. I don't think that hurts anybody. But yeah, I think they're different things. I don't care for that comparison.
For sure. Yeah, I'm curious to see how this is going to play out in the courts.
So Kayla, that got me all riled up, that conversation. Can you take us down a little bit? Give me something that's going to whet my appetite and be non-controversial.
Yeah, I know. We ate our vegetables. So here's a little bit of dessert. So City Paper just came out with their best of list, and actually they release one category per day. The last one just came out yesterday, and they're just, it's a list of the best bagels in DC, like the best chiropractor in DC, like the best of everything, like every possible category, like hundreds, like that you can imagine, right? And so we've gone through them all, and some of them are great, and I agree with, and I think are correct, and some of them I'm not so sure. And I know, Bridget and Priyanka, this is your first time hearing some of these. So I'm just going to read some out to you, and you tell me whether or not you agree with them, right? So there's a few different categories. The first of which is food and drink, obviously the most exciting category, as we all know. So for the best bagel category, we have Call Your Mother.
Ugh.
I know. There seems like there's better ones.
So overpriced. It's like $12.
Right? I know. So these are reader picks, by the way. There's reader and editor picks. These are from the reader picks. We have Best Bakery, which is Whisked, which I've actually never heard of. Has anybody?
Never been. No.
I mean, like Rose Ave Bakery, nobody, nothing.
Yeah, that was a runner-up, I think. But Rose Ave is amazing.
Like,
also,
so
baked
many.
joint. Like, I don't know. I
Bread
could list
First?
off Bread
Oh,
First.
yeah.
I could list off so many.
Oh, Bread First is good.
Okay, the best bar was the Blackguard, which I know of, but I've actually never been to.
Same.
And then we have Best Mocktail, which was Binge Bar, which I did go to and I thought was overrated myself. We've got Best Reader Picks for like arts and culture and people and places. So the best arts and culture festival was the Turkish Festival. Has anybody been to the Turkish Festival?
No.
Me neither. Yeah, but I thought the Smithsonian Festival might win because it's enormous.
Yeah, the Folklife Festival.
No. There was a best friend category. So Miles Wilson, whoever you are, I'm so glad that you're doing well. And congratulations on winning the best friend in DC.
How does that even work?
I'm going to dispute that. I feel like I'm the best friend in this city.
I know. I don't know. I'm a little offended that one of us didn't win, to be honest. It's a little upsetting, but
Is that like just like a write-in? Like Miles just has the most friends who
I'm pretty
actually
sure.
voted?
Yeah, it was. They're all written. They're
Okay.
written in. So next year, just remember. I know my name's hard to spell, but you get it every day in your inbox. So just a note.
Oh, we should use the power of this podcast and media company.
Just make sure to vote for me for best friend.
Yeah, we're gonna start campaigning early.
This is my life's mission from now on. We got best place to take an out of towner. People voted on the Bonsai Museum over like the National Mall, over like any of the art museum, like over everything.
I like that.
It's
I like
unique.
that. Like, I mean, it feels like a real local win for us to have picked
Yeah.
something that's not the National Mall. I don't know if my pick would have been the Bonsai Museum specifically, but just for it to not be the National Mall.
I know, it's inspiring me to go.
What would your pick have been?
Best place to take an out of towner. I love taking people to Planet Word.
I've
That's
never
because
been
all my
Oh,
friends
it's
are
so
nerds.
good.
Is it? Okay.
It's so good. It's so interactive. As someone who has a deep love of languages, like both English language and also languages generally, Planet Word is cool. And they do a lot of fun events too. And most of them are free. So that's my pick.
I think I have to take people to like Eastern Market or something. Something where it's like,
Oh, yeah.
in the like, little bookstore and like the little market area. I think that'd be cute.
True.
I might do the Kenilworth Aquatic Gardens,
Yeah.
which I learned about from Black Girl Explore DC
Gorgeous.
from the episode that we did on
Yeah.
it. So
Yeah. On this podcast. Love it.
So moving on, the best local Instagram account was Clockout DC, but unfortunately she is shutting down.
She's already shut down. She says she's done. I did talk to her, I emailed with her, and she said that she just felt like moving on, so she's moving on. But hope she's happy. But it is sad that our best local Instagram account by readers' picks, but also just generally, I would say probably the most well-known,
Most comprehensive by far, yeah.
is going to be gone, and we're going to have to find something else to turn to. I suppose people could turn to CityCast DC.
Ooh, that was a good.
Nice plug. Okay, and tragically, the best doggy daycare was won by District Dogs just a day before.
Oh, that's rough.
I'm not sure if they would have won a day after, but that's rough. Yeah.
That is very sad.
There are a few editor picks, and it seems like the editors got a little bit cheeky with the responses.
Okay.
So we got the best bear in DC, which you can probably guess is Mr. Franklin, the Brooklyn bear, who was up in a tree.
What a cutie.
Just such a cutie. The best people pleaser was Brooke Pinto, which seems a little pointed. If you don't know, Brooke Pinto is the Ward 2 council member.
Very pointed. Yeah, she's been like agreeing with Mayor Bowser on a lot of things recently, especially when it comes to crime response and like how the city is handling that. And I guess
Teacher's pet situation.
yeah, I'm guessing that's what they're going for.
I
but
guess so.
ouch.
So this is like let's throw a little shade at Brooke Pinto via
Yeah.
this like mean
Exactly.
superlative. You know what? I'm here for it.
And then we have the best under the radar feud, which is Charles Allen and Kenyon McDuffie, does anybody know what that beef is? Because I do not. It's so under the radar, we don't even know about it.
I think they do tend to be on the opposite side of a lot of issues. Like, for example, the stadium fight, like whether or not the Commanders should get a stadium in DC and whether taxpayers should pay for it. Kenyon and Charles are on opposite ends of that. I also think when it comes to like crime bill stuff, but yeah, I think it's mostly policy things. But if there's a deeper, like personal beef / feud,
Please let us know.
yeah, I want to know.
And then the best loser is, dun, 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 dun. Can you guess?
I don't know. Is it another council member? Phil Mendelson?
No, it's Dan Snyder. It's Dan Snyder.
Oh,
Yeah. So
Of course.
that seems
Yeah.
like an obvious choice there.
happy to hear it.
And then my personal favorite one, which I thought was hilarious, is the best way to get high when Republicans say you cannot. And the winner is to self-certify for a medical marijuana card in DC, or just go to Maryland. Also, on that note, Tacoma Wellness Center won the best dispensary in DC. I don't know if that helps anybody, but yeah. So they really got some good answers there. I recommend going in and looking through the whole list because they do get quite hilarious.
Yeah, I would say the best way to get high when Republicans say you can't is just do it because everyone's high in DC anyway.
It's like, just walk around and get secondhand high from everybody talking.
Yeah.
Kayla, Priyanka, thank you for running through these stories with me. And thank you for pushing back against some of these best bar, best bagel. I don't know if this is like the time where I find out that I'm actually old and out of touch because I have not been to a lot of these places, but it was clarifying.
Happy to help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely check out the full list.
That's all for today here on CityCast DC. Our lead producer is Priyanka Tilve. Our producers are Elizabeth Kama and Julia Karen. Our newsletter writer is Kayla Cody Stemmerman. Our production assistant is Susanna Brown. And our hosts are Michael Schaefer from Politico and me, Bridget Todd. Music is by Alex Roldan. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. We'll be back Monday morning with even more news from around the city. Talk to you then.